Hey, it's Tony Verovan, and I am at the Irving, Texas 2024 NAFA Technical Seminar. We're having a great time. We had a great day today, and I thought I would just take a couple minutes inside of the empty ballroom and record a couple podcast intros for some 2022 technical seminar episodes that we recorded a couple of years ago. So we've been recording a lot of conference content, and so you've been hearing some of that in the last few episodes. This episode is Todd McGrath, CAFS, who is a senior engineer at Glassfoss Industries. He is also the chair of the ASHRAE Standard 52.2, and he's going to give us the recent updates and upgrades to ASHRAE SSPC 52.2. Thanks so much and enjoy.
You're listening to the Talking Air Filtration podcast, where you get to know the people that make air filtration possible and help us all breathe easier. Because clean air matters.
We'll get insights from air filtration professionals and learn how they became successful in their careers. Along the way, we will discuss best practices, guidelines, trends, and challenges in air filtration in a variety of applications. We hope HVAC, air filtration, and indoor air quality pros, including business development, engineering, building owners, and facilities management, will enjoy the insights our guests will bring to this podcast.
As many people know, SSPC 52.2 is an ongoing committee with many action items in the fire, everything always improving and changing. Our next presenter is Todd McGrath of Glassfoss Industries. He's senior engineer there and current chair of 52.2. He'd like to go ahead and ask him to touch on some of the upcoming changes that are already published and will be fully released under the next publication. Todd McGrath.
So like Mike said, my name is Todd McGrath. I'm with Glassfoss Industries, and I'm the current chair of ASHRAE 52.2. So a little bit about myself. So I'm the senior engineer with Glassfoss Industries. I've been there for about 22 years. Got my degrees in physics and mathematics from Southeastern Oklahoma State University. Also got my master's in mechanical engineering from SMU. I'm the current chair of 52.2. I'm a voting member and secretary of GPC 35 and about to be a voting member for TC 2.4. So kind of what have been the most recent upgrades that we've made to 52.2? And in this part, when I say recent, I'm talking about, 5-ish years. So as most people know, that we made some updates to the MERV table where we were able to make a better MERV progression. So we updated the charts, and what that able to us to do is we get, more uniform on the steps. And what it prevents is that there were certain points where a single percentage point could take you from like a MERV 11 to a MERV 8. So now we have better progressions on that. We also made some updates on the shedding data, and that just deals with the reentrainment of dust during the test, and that mainly deals with MERV 4 and lower type filters. And in my mind, one of the bigger adjustments that we made or upgrades that we made is to the relative humidity. So we narrowed that range. So now the new range is 35 to 55%, and that stemmed from the research project 1287. So if everybody remembers that the old range was between 20 and 65%, so you can see we've significantly reduced that range. And what we saw out of that 1287 is you could see 20 percentage points of variation on the E3 range. So if you remember back looking at we talked about adjusting the MERV table. If you go from MERV 8 to 9 to 10, you're talking like 5 percentage increments of there. So if you're seeing 20 percentage points, you can see some big variability on your MERV results. We also updated some terminology for the optical particle counters. So it requires only use of OPC now, and that also stemmed from the 1287. So really, of doing all that, what's our big goal? Well, we want repeatability and reproducibility. Say that 5 times real fast. So what we want to be able to do is you can take a case of filters, send it to the test lab, and when you get your data back, you have a nice, even grouping of efficiency curves. You don't have single point data outliers. You don't have 10 to 20 percentage points differences on those curves. What we also want to do is if you're sending that same case of filters to maybe 4 different labs, that the results you get back from those 4 different labs are nice, even curves, tight grouping, no outlying data points, no big steps of up and down. So kind of what would that look like? So here's a general example of a previous round robin test that was done in the past. Filter sent to multiple labs. And you can see on this, you don't have a really great, nice grouping of the curves. You have some variation in there, 10 and 20 percentage points from various microns sizes. On this one, kind of highlighted some different areas. So as you can see, kind of in the middle 1 to 2 micron size range, you kind of have a big dispersion, but you kind of have an upper band and a lower band. And also looking at the lower end of 0.3 microns, we will see variations of efficiencies from 12% up to 32%. So definitely that type of stuff can lead to big variations in your reports. So what do we want to see? So we want to see this curves like this, nice tight curves that go up, very uniform, no big data outliers or various curves that are sticking out 10, 20 percentage points. So where did that get us? So we spent all this time, we made all these adjustments. So then kind of what's our next step? So we want to figure out of all the steps and all the updates and all the upgrades that we made, did this help us? Did this get to what we wanted to see? So what we have working right now is Research Project 1784, and that's the repeatability and reproducibility assessment of ASHRAE 52.2. So it's basically another big round robin test. And the round robin test is where the principal investigator of the project is going to get in a bunch of samples of filters in designated efficiency ranges, send those filters out to as many labs that she can get to participate in the research project, get all the data back of the efficiency curves of the filters themselves, but also data back about how that lab is running the test. So they'll have questions on the forms to ask the labs how they're running it, various settings of what their test rigs are set up, and some other information like that. So what we're trying to do is test to see of all the changes that we've done, are we getting better? Are we getting more repeatability and reproducibility? And the current principal investigator for that is Kathleen Owen. And she was actually able to give us a little bit of update at the ASHRAE show in Las Vegas. And actually, I talked with her last week. So we're eagerly waiting to hear how her project ends up. She's actually very close to being finished. As we all know, we won't be able to get any of the results until her project is completely finished and published for that. But everybody here promises not to tell Kathleen I told you so. I do have a spoiler alert. So she did tell me that the data is actually looking really good. She was really impressed with the data that she's seeing. She said she's seen definite increases of repeatability and reproducibility from interlab and from lab to lab test reports. So we're really excited to see what's going to come of that. MERV 17. So I would be willing to bet that there's a handful of people out there that have either got a request from a customer or somehow someone asked that, hey, I need a MERV 17 filter. So I know I've had that same type of request in the past, and it's just problematic. See, I believe back when we were first getting 52.2 out, everybody in that committee was eager to put out as much information as we could out to the public. We wanted the end users, the filter manufacturers, and everybody else to get as much information as we could to try to make that transition from 52.1 to 52.2. I mean, we even made charts where the chart would say a MERV 11 is a 65% filter. A MERV 13 is an 85% filter. A MERV 14 is a 95% filter, and so on. But sometimes in the effort to put out as much information as you want to get out there, you just end up shooting yourself in the foot. And we had MERV 17. And on that same chart, we put MERV 17 equals a HEPA style filter. And as we know from the actually 52.2 test, you cannot test and get a MERV 17 result. So that's one thing we're actively doing. So we removed all references of MERV 17, 18, 19, and 20 from the standard. And also what we're currently doing is we're actively reaching out to other entities and updating them on their misuse of MERV 17. So kind of what does that involve? That involves me getting on Wikipedia page and doing my best wordsmithing on the page of what is a HEPA filter and kind of explaining where MERV goes up to, where it stops, and then where the HEPA filter can take over. It's also getting with the Texas Department of State Health. They had in one of their codes that it was required to use a MERV 17 filter in a certain space or confinement area. So imagine trying to go out and bid that project and they're requiring you to get a MERV 17 filter. Definitely be pretty difficult. We're also sending documents to Granger. They have some stuff published out there as well. And also Johns Hopkins had some documents published out there. So now the more recent upgrades that we made to 52.2. And in this section, when I say recent, I'm like the last year or two. And so these are the more recent ones. So we did add a PM 52.2 efficiency to the 52.2. And that's just a calculated efficiency for particulate matter removal. And like Bob said yesterday, it is an efficiency number. Oh yeah, Bob's not here. So I was gonna say, if you saw Bob yesterday, anybody could pull off a Hawaiian shirt. That is Bob. That looked awesome. So it is based off a flat distribution curve. And we are using the averages of E values from the 52.2 test. And the terminology, or how you would say it, is PM1 52.2, PM 2.5 52.2, or PM10 52.2. So as you can see from the chart, the PM1 52.2 is just the corresponding size range from 0.3 to 1, which in the test is just E1. PM 2.5 52.2 is 0.3 to 3.0, which is E1 and E2. And if you look at PM 10 52.2, it's 0.3 to 10, which is E1, E2, and E3. So that makes PM 1 52.2 just the average of range 1 through 4. That makes PM 2.5 52.2 the average of range 1 through 8. And it makes PM 10 52.2 the average of range 1 through 12. So if you pull the chart from 52.2, you have the range of all 1 through 12 there, with the corresponding particle size ranges in the middle and the E groupings on that right side. So I think as a better visual aid you can kind of see is the PM1 52.2 is range 1 through 4, which like I said was just E1. The PM 2.5 52.2 is the 1 through 8, which is just E1 and E2. And for the PM 10 52.2, you can say it's 1 through 12, and that just makes E1, E2, and E3. So if you were to take 5 test examples of a MERV 5, a MERV 11, and a MERV 15, and these are actual numbers that would be that type of filter efficiency. If you were to convert that into the PM 52.2 values, what would they look like? So if you have a MERV 5 with a E1 of 4, an E2 of 20, and an E3 of 33, you're going to have a PM1 52.2 of 4, a PM 2.5 52.2 of 12, and a PM 10 52.2 of 19. So if you were to take a MERV 11 filter with E ranges of E1 of 31, E2 of 73, E3 of 97, and you're going to have a PM 1 52.2 of 31, a PM 2.5 52.2 of 52, and a PM 10 52.2 of 67. So looking at the MERV 15, E1 of 88, E2 of 98, E3 of PM 1 52.2 of 88, a PM 2.5 52.2 of 93, and a PM 10 52.2 of 95. So also the most recent addendum that just passed is the optional method for determining filter and air cleaner efficiency in removing or inactivating airborne viruses and bacteria. So during the COVID pandemic, the efficiency data was needed for viruses and bacteria. And I believe Dr. Miller kind of touched on this yesterday morning too. We needed to show what the removal or inactive efficiency numbers were for viruses and bacteria. Now, currently there is SPC 185, but that's only for UV lights and systems. But on that, the calculations for 185 is pretty close to 52.2. So we had a group of people on 52.2 kind of thinking, since 52.2 is a particulate removal standard, and kind of like Dr. Miller touched on yesterday, viruses, microorganisms, and bacteria, they can just be considered as just particles. What if we could just use different particles, safer particles, like a bioaerosol, and kind of where does that fit? What wheelhouse does that fit into? Well, man, that fits right into the 52.2 wheelhouse. So I will say for this addendum, I was really impressed at how fast it was able to be put through the system and also how substantial it actually is. And I think the key to that was we had a small group of highly intelligent people that wrote the standard up or wrote the proposal up, got all the paperwork written, got it to 52.2. The committee voted on it, passed it, got it out to public review, had nothing but good comments on it, and that way it was accepted as probably as fast as I've seen one accepted.
Are your air filtration personnel NAFA certified? Ask if they belong to NAFA and have their certified air filter specialist or NAFA certified technician designations. The CAFS and NCT designations are earned after rigorous exams and demonstrate that the air filtration professional has a high degree of knowledge and professionalism. To learn more about NAFA certifications, visit nafahq.org.
Looking at the addendum there, so it does use a qualified 52.2 duct, and it allows for selections of organisms for safe surrogates, so ones that you could select in place of COVID-19, influenza, and tuberculosis. It requires a no device, device off test correlation, so I believe that helps speed up testing. And it also calculates the removal efficiency or inactivation efficiency. So it does include both, since you can't tell if the organism itself is not growing or just didn't show up on the culture. And it is recommended that testing more than one organism, since they can have some tremendously different resistance levels to whatever you're trying to filter out. And any duct mounted device system can work, except UV only devices. So kind of the 52.2 current project, kind of what we're going forward with. Now I know what you're thinking, Todd, man, you just went over all that stuff 52 has just done in the last 5 years. There's no possible way you could have anything else left to do. But don't worry, we're still working on stuff. Right now, we're actually working on some revisions of the appendices, and that's going through the appendix sections, unifying some terms, working on some equations and getting that up. So where that kind of led us to also was an overall document consistency check. So we created 2 teams, and each team was separately going through the document and looking for terms that just don't match up and various stuff like that. So if you think about it, 52.2 has been around for 20 plus years. And over that time of various addendums, updates, errata changes, terms from whoever wrote something 15 years ago versus how someone would write it 5 years ago, they don't always just match up perfectly. So kind of taking point, if you're looking to designate the final resistance of a filter, that may be listed in the document in 2 different places, but the terminology of those 2 places don't exactly match up, and they should. So if you're trying to figure out the final resistance, if it's here and here in the document, you want the verbiage and terminology to be the same. Another thing we're working on is a charge durability index. So what that is a flat sheet test of charged media. And what we're trying to figure out is how much and how fast a charge will decay, if it does. So that's something that could possibly be added to the appendix later. And that is something that is right now is based off of a NIOSH codified procedure. And so that's one of the projects that's in the committee that we're working on now. Like I said, we still have a research project 1784, and results will probably definitely bring in some upgrading possibilities to dump on the current chair. Give the current chair the opportunity to make upgrades to the 52.2. And we're also working on a YouTube/social media video. And so what this is going to explain the MERV chart a little more in depth and also give some updates on our MERV 17 removal and terminology for that. So we do have the funding for that. We're still kind of working on the script. So if anybody out there is working on their actress career, you have a resume, send me a current headshot, and I'll have my people get back with your people. So I'd like to thank the NAFA committee for allowing me to come up here and talk. I appreciate all you for allowing me the time to give you a little bit of update on 52.2, and I will open the floor up for some questions. No questions from the class table, by the way. Not allowed.
How is the humidity, the tighter humidity range controlled at the lab? Can you explain that?
So either dehumidifiers or humidifiers at the lab.
But do they pull in outside air, or are the labs using inside conditioned air?
So I would say is I don't operate a lab. I would say they probably have some variations, do both. They do pull some outside air, probably just keep indoor air recirculated. But to get to those humidity levels, you say if you're here in Louisville and it's raining, you may have to shut all the doors, recirculate the air inside, and use dehumidifiers.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Talking Air Filtration Podcast, a production of the National Air Filtration Association. Clean air matters.